Have you ever stopped to think about what's really going on in your brain when you mindlessly scroll through your phone? Or, when you automatically reach for that first cup of coffee in the morning? Well, it turns out every single one of your behaviors, the good ones and the bad ones, is run by the exact same hidden four-step pattern. And today, we're going to break down that blueprint. Okay, so where do we start? Well, believe it or not, our whole understanding of how habits work kicks off with a pretty clever experiment from way back in 1898. And yeah, it involves a cat in a box. This isn't just some weird piece of history, I promise. It is the key to unlocking how all of our own actions are formed. So yeah, let's talk about this experiment. It was run by a psychologist named Edward Thorndike, and what he discovered really laid the groundwork for basically everything we now know about behavior change. So here's the setup. Thorndike would put a cat inside one of these puzzle boxes. Now to get out and get a tasty reward, like a piece of fish, the cat had to figure out the trick. Maybe it was pulling a string, or in this case, pressing a little lever. At first, the cats were just frantic, right? Poking and clawing and sniffing around randomly until, whoops, they'd accidentally hit the solution. Now this is where it gets really, really interesting. Just look at the data from one of these cats. The first try, it took 160 seconds to get out, but by the 10th try, it was down to 22 seconds. And look at that, by the end, it's averaging just over 6 seconds. With every single success, all the useless scrambling just faded away, and the cat's actions got faster, more efficient, and totally automatic. It was learning right before his eyes. And this brought Thorndike to a super simple but incredibly powerful conclusion. He said, behaviors followed by satisfying consequences tend to be repeated. That satisfying reward, getting out and getting the food, literally stamped the memory of pressing the lever into the cat's brain. And that, right there, is the feedback loop that drives all behavior. Okay, so let's jump from cats to our own, much more complex brains. Why does our brain even bother turning things into automatic routines? Well, the answer is all about one thing: efficiency. You see, a habit is really just the brain's way of automating a solution to a problem that it sees over and over again. When you first face a problem, your brain is firing on all cylinders, trying to figure it out. But once you stumble upon a solution that works, your brain basically says, awesome, let's save that and create a mental shortcut for next time. And this slide shows you exactly why that's so important. Your conscious mind, the part you're using to listen to me right now, is powerful, but it's a huge bottleneck. It can really only focus on one new problem at a time. So what does it do? It outsources jobs to the non-conscious mind. And get this, once a habit is formed, brain activity actually goes down. It frees up your conscious mind to focus on other stuff. And this is a really big deal. It means that habits aren't restrictive at all. In fact, they're what allow for real focus and creativity. By putting the fundamentals on autopilot, you create the mental space you need for new ideas and for deeper thinking. Seriously, think about it. The person with great financial habits doesn't have to stress about paying bills. Their mind is free to think about investing or maybe starting a business. The person with solid health habits has the energy to actually go pursue their passions. Habits handle the basics so you can focus on what's next. Okay, so now we know why our brains form habits, but how does it actually work? Moment to moment. Well, the entire process can be broken down into a simple 4-step feedback loop that's constantly running in the background of our lives. These are the 4 stages: the cue, the craving, the response, and the reward. Every single habit you have, every single one, from brushing your teeth to checking your email, follows this exact structure. So let's quickly break each one down. First up, you've got the cue. This is the trigger. It's that little bit of information in your environment that tells your brain, hey, a reward is nearby. It could be the buzz of your phone in your pocket, the smell of coffee brewing, or even just the time of day. It's what gets the whole ball rolling. So the cue leads to the second step, the craving. And this is a really key insight, so listen close. You don't actually crave the habit itself. You don't crave smoking a cigarette. You crave the feeling of relief that it provides. You don't crave turning on the TV. You crave the feeling of entertainment and escape that it gives you. The craving is always for the change in your internal state. So that craving is what motivates step 3, the response. This is the actual habit, whether it's a physical action like picking up your phone or just a thought like starting to worry about a deadline. And what's really important here is that if the response takes too much effort, if it's too hard, you just won't do it, no matter how much you want that reward. And finally, the response delivers the reward. Now, the reward does two jobs. First, it satisfies your craving. It gives you that little hit of pleasure or relief you were looking for. And second, it teaches your brain that this whole loop is worth remembering for the future. It basically says, hey, that worked. Let's do it again. It closes the loop. We can actually simplify this even more. The first two steps, the cue and the craving, that's the problem phase. It's your brain noticing that something needs to change. And the next two steps, the response and reward, that's the solution phase. That's your brain taking action to solve the problem. That's all a habit is. Problem, solution. Problem, solution. So how do we actually use this? I mean, understanding the loop is one thing, but controlling it is the real goal, right? Let's translate this whole four-step model into a practical framework that you can use like today to start designing good habits and getting rid of the bad ones. See, each of those four steps in the habit loop is like a lever we can pull to influence our behavior. These are what we call the 4 laws of behavior change, and they give us a simple but really powerful system for taking back control of our actions. Okay, this lays out the entire system. It's so simple. To build a good habit, you just ask yourself, how can I make the cue obvious? How can I make the craving attractive? How can I make the response easy? And how can I make the reward satisfying? So for the gym, you make it obvious by laying out your clothes. You make it attractive with a killer playlist. You make it easy by picking a gym on your way to work. You make it satisfying by tracking your progress. And to break a bad habit, you just flip it. You make the cue invisible, make the craving unattractive, make the response difficult, and make the reward unsatisfying. It's that straightforward. All right, I know that was a lot, but it all comes down to just a few core ideas that give you a complete system for understanding and, more importantly, changing your own behavior. Let's do a quick recap. So just remember, habits are just those mental shortcuts your brain loves to use to save energy. Every single one of them, no exceptions, runs on that 4-step feedback loop of cue, craving, response, reward. And now, by using the 4 laws, you have a practical set of rules, a user manual, to redesign the habits that are shaping your life. So, that really just leaves us with one final question. Now that you have the blueprint, now that you have the instruction manual for your own behavior, it's not a mystery anymore. The only question left is, where are you going to start?